Tristan Zayne hated airports, especially when they smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. But as he stepped off the private jet, his Italian shoes hitting the tarmac with a clean click, he had no idea the woman holding the clipboard would change his entire life. "Sir, you're not cleared to be out here without an escort," the woman said, her voice sharp and tired. Her brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her orange safety vest looked 2 sizes too big. Tristan turned, one brow raised, taking in the scene. She stood between 2 service carts, her steel-toed boots planted like she had no intention of moving even for a man who just landed in a $30 million jet. "And you are?" he asked, amused by her lack of fear. "Mara Venn," she said, flipping the clipboard to check something. "Ramp supervisor, and you're not above FAA policy even if that plane behind you looks like it belongs to Bruce Wayne." He exhaled a short laugh. "It's Tristan, actually." "Tristan what?" she asked, eyes narrowing. He paused. "Tristan Zayne." Her pen stopped mid-scratch. "The Tristan Zayne," she blinked. "As in, Zayne Tech Global Holdings. The guy who once bought an entire hotel to avoid paparazzi." "Depends," he said, stepping closer. "Is that going to get me out of trouble?" "Not even a little," Mara said, crossing her arms. "But I appreciate the honesty." She turned and walked toward the terminal. Tristan followed without thinking. It was supposed to be a quick trip to Nashville business merger, dinner with the board, then back to New York. But instead of a black car waiting for him, there'd been a mix-up. The driver went to the wrong terminal, and the assistant he'd fired last week hadn't updated the manifest. Now he was following a woman in a high-vis vest who clearly had no idea he could buy the entire airport if he wanted. She held the door open for him at the staff entrance. "This way, billionaire," he grinned. "You sure you don't want to call me Mr. Zayne?" "Oh, I'm sure," she said, leading him down a narrow hallway. "You get enough of that already." He didn't know what made him stay in step with her. Maybe it was the way she didn't try to flatter him. Maybe it was the way her voice sounded like she didn't have time for nonsense. Or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in a long time, someone didn't look at him and see money. "I take it you don't follow business news," he said casually. "I follow weather alerts and union memos," she said. "Kind of my job." They reached a break room. She grabbed a bottle of water from an ancient fridge and handed it to him. "Here, until your driver gets it together." He took it. "You always this nice to stranded billionaires. Only the ones who don't act like jerks." He laughed again, and this time it caught even him off guard. "Well, thanks, I'll just wait here and try not to ruin any infrastructure." She gave him a half smile and turned to leave. "How long have you worked here?" he asked before she could go. She paused. 3 years, before that baggage and night shift." "Why stay?" She looked back at him. "Because it's steady. And people like me don't usually have a dozen options." He frowned. "People like you, normal people," she said simply. "We don't get jets and drivers and 5-star dinner meetings, we just get through the day." Then she was gone. Tristan sat for a long minute, staring at the bottle in his hand. He was used to models, heiresses, and socialites. Women who wore designer perfume and called him darling while checking their reflection in his penthouse windows. But Mara, she was something else. 2 days later he came back, not because he had to. His business in Nashville was already done. But he told his pilot to swing around and refuel. When he stepped into the terminal again, she was there wrangling a group of confused tourists and yelling something about checked luggage. She spotted him, eyes narrowing. "You again?" "I owed you a thank you," he said, holding up a white box. She eyed it. "What's that?" "Pastries, from Lamari's downtown. Figured you deserved something better than vending machine pretzels." She raised an eyebrow. "You flew back here for that? And maybe to see if you'd have coffee with me." She stared at him. "Is this a joke?" "Nope. I don't date rich men." "Good," he said, "because I don't date people who only care about that." She hesitated. He stepped closer. "Let me take you somewhere, real food, real conversation, no press, no cameras, just us." "I have a shift," she said, voice softer now. "After your shift," Tristan said, "I'll wait." She looked at him like she was trying to figure out if he was serious. Then she sighed and took the box from his hands. "Fine. But if you try anything weird, I know how to use a luggage scanner as a weapon," he grinned. Noted. That night, he took her to a rooftop restaurant, quiet, candlelit, overlooking the skyline. She wore a simple navy blouse and jeans. He wore a suit but left the tie at home. They talked for hours about her dad, who passed away 2 years ago. About the time she got stuck under a conveyor belt during a snow delay. About how she used to love painting but hadn't picked up a brush in years. He told her about the pressure. How everyone expected him to be perfect. How he hadn't trusted anyone in years, not really. Not since his brother sold their company secrets for a payout. "I don't let people in easily," he said, voice low. Mara looked at him, eyes soft. "Maybe you haven't met the right people." He reached across the table, brushing his fingers against hers. "I think I just did." She didn't pull away. The next morning he had to leave again. Meetings in LA, board votes, stock announcements. But before he boarded the jet, she stood by the fence near the tarmac, watching him. He walked over, heart already heavy. "I'll be back," he said. "Soon. You always say that," she replied. He took her hand. "I mean it this time. You're a billionaire, Tristan. And you're the only person I've met who makes me feel like a person." She swallowed hard. "I don't want to be a chapter." "You're not," he said. "You're the story." And then he kissed her right there in front of the jet, in front of the sky, the wind, the world, and for the first time in years. He didn't want to leave. 2 weeks passed. The silence stretched longer than Mara expected. She told herself she didn't care that it was better this way. Men like Tristan Zayne didn't orbit her world for long, and she didn't need him to. Still, every time her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted. Every shift she worked, she glanced toward the tarmac, knowing full well his jet wouldn't be there. Then, one humid Thursday afternoon, the airport's operations room buzzed with activity. "Private jet inbound on runway 4, one of the officers called out. "Unscheduled." Mara didn't look up from her screen until the voice added, "Tail number matches that Zayne Tech jet." Her hand froze on the keyboard. She didn't bother checking the monitor. She already knew. Outside, the summer heat shimmered off the pavement as his jet rolled to a stop. The door opened, and there he was, navy shirt rolled at the forearms, sunglasses in one hand. She didn't go out to meet him. She stayed inside, watching from behind a tinted window. He didn't wait for clearance. Instead, he walked straight through the restricted gate, flashing his ID badge and ignoring the radio chatter. When he found her in the break room, she was pouring coffee into a chipped mug that read, "Ground crew, we make it fly." "I was starting to think you forgot how to get here," she said, not looking up. "I didn't forget," he replied quietly. She set the pot down. "So what happened?" "I had to figure some things out," he said. "About myself, about what I want." "And what's the verdict?" she asked, finally meeting his eyes. "You," he said simply. "I want you." She let out a quiet breath and leaned against the counter. "People don't just change their lives overnight." "I didn't," Tristan said. "I shifted mine. I moved a board meeting, rerouted a supplier summit, bought a property in the city. I made space. For me, for whatever this is, for a chance." She shook her head slowly. "You don't have to impress me. I'm not trying to." He stepped closer. "But I'm not the man who lets something real slip through his fingers just because it's inconvenient." She looked down, her voice softer now. "I don't want to be someone you chase just to prove a point." "You're not," he said. "You're someone I can't stop thinking about no matter how far I fly." She didn't answer right away, then she nodded toward the door. "Walk with me." They wandered past the maintenance hangars, the wind tugging at her loose braid. The ground vibrated as a commercial plane took off in the distance. "This isn't a world you're used to," she said. "It's loud, dirty, unpredictable." "I like it," he said. "It's honest." They stopped near a stack of orange cones, the sun dipping low behind the terminal. "You know what I did last week?" she asked, arms crossed. "I spent 4 hours trying to get a luggage belt unstuck because a wedding dress got wrapped around the rollers. I was elbow-deep in tulle and engine grease." He grinned. "Sounds glamorous." "It wasn't," she said. And the week before that, I had to calm down a guy who thought we lost his cat. Turned out it was under his seat the whole time. Tristan tilted his head. You're trying to scare me off, I'm trying to be clear, she said. This is my life, it's not polished, it's not curated. He stepped forward until they were less than a foot apart. I don't want curated. I want real. She studied him for a long moment. Then finally she said, okay, his eyes flickered. Okay, you can take me to dinner, but somewhere that doesn't require a reservation from Paris, he smiled. There's a diner 10 minutes from here, no valet. Sticky menus. Perfect, she said, and started walking. Inside the little diner, the waitress greeted Mara by name and slid her a cherry soda without asking. Tristan looked around at the cracked booths and flickering neon. You know, I've signed deals in rooms that cost more than this entire building. I'm not surprised, she said, sipping her drink. But this, he said, looking at her, feels more important. She paused mid-bite. You say things like that a lot, because they're true. I don't always know how to respond. You don't have to, he said. Just be here. Later, after they ate, he walked her to her car. It was an old sedan with a cracked rearview mirror and a dent in the bumper. He didn't say a word about it. She leaned against the door, arms folded. So what happens now? I come back, he said, as often as I can. And if I don't want to be part of your schedule, then I make a new one. She looked up at him, her face unreadable. You're exhausting, she said finally, so I've been told. Then she kissed him. Not like the first time, this one was slower, more certain, like something solid was starting to form between them. He didn't rush it. He let it settle. The next morning, he was gone again. But this time, he left behind a note tucked into her locker. Tell runway 7 to keep a light on. I'll be back before it burns out. The next time Tristan flew in, there was no warning. Mara had been elbow-deep in a delay report when the security phone rang. There's a guy at the south gate. Says he's cleared for restricted access, the guard said. Name's Tristan Zayne. She didn't respond right away. Should I call it in? No, Mara said, setting down her pen. I'll handle it. Outside, the clouds hung low and heavy over the horizon, casting a silvery filter over the tarmac. Tristan stood just outside the gate, wearing a storm gray coat and holding a paper bag in one hand. He didn't look like someone who flew in on private jets. He looked tired, unfiltered. I thought you were in Singapore, Mara said as she approached. I was, and now you're here. I needed something that wasn't a boardroom ceiling. He handed her the bag. Inside was a sandwich carefully wrapped in butcher paper. You said your lunch breaks were unpredictable. Figured I'd bring you something that didn't come from a vending machine. She looked up at him, confused. You flew across the world to bring me a sandwich, he hesitated. That, and I needed to see your face. Mara didn't open the bag. She stepped aside without a word and motioned toward the staff entrance. In the break nook behind the logistics office, she sat across from him at a metal table covered in old maintenance memos. Her name badge was still clipped to her vest, her hair pulled back with a pencil. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I haven't, Tristan replied, leaning back. I've been trying to figure out how to tell my board I don't want to live on planes anymore, she blinked. Are you stepping down? No, I'm restructuring. Why? He tapped his fingers against the table. Because I don't want to be the guy who's always en route to somewhere else. I want roots. Mara folded her arms. You're not just saying that because I kissed you in a parking lot, are you? Tristan let out a low breath. That kiss reminded me what it feels like to want something for the right reasons. She didn't respond immediately, then she said, I'm not some reward you get for changing your itinerary. I know, he said. But I also know that every time I leave, I think about what it would mean to stay. She leaned forward slightly. What would that even look like for you? I bought a place downtown, nothing ridiculous, just a loft near the river, her brow lifted. You bought real estate, he nodded. I've never owned anything that didn't have a boardroom in it. I figured it was time. She stared at him, uncertain. What are you doing, Tristan? I'm building a life that doesn't need a passport to function. And you think that includes me? He met her gaze. I hope so. The room was quiet for several seconds. Then Mara said, "You have no idea how hard it is for me to believe that someone like you would want this life." "I'm not asking for your life," he said gently. "I'm asking if there's room in it for me." She looked down at the table. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he said. "Maybe that's the point." She stood suddenly. "I need to get back. There's a crew waiting on a redirect." He rose too. "Can I see you later?" Mara hesitated. "There's an open mic night at a place near my building." "I usually go when I can." "Do you sing?" "No, I listen," he smiled. "I can listen." Later that evening, Mara unlocked the door to the narrow venue tucked between a laundromat and a used bookstore. The lights were dim, the stage small, the mic slightly crooked. She wore a dark blouse and earrings she hadn't worn in years. As she stepped inside, she felt her nerves twist. Then she saw him. Tristan sat at the back, tucked into a corner booth, a glass of something clear in front of him. He looked out of place but not uncomfortable. When he saw her, he stood, waiting until she reached him before speaking. "You came," she said, sliding into the booth. "I told you I would." A woman on stage read a poem about her mother's garden. The crowd clapped softly. Mara watched the lights flicker across the stage and felt her chest tighten. "I used to write," she said suddenly. "When? High school, before things got complicated." "Why'd you stop?" She shrugged. "Life filled up, bills, work, survival." Tristan leaned in. "What would it take to start again?" She looked at him. "A reason?" "I'll be your reason," he said, his voice low. Mara didn't speak. She watched the next performer take the mic, a young man with shaking hands and a trembling voice. He read something about falling in love with someone who didn't know how to be loved. She didn't move for a long time. Then she turned to Tristan. "If you're serious, you'll be here next week. Same time." He nodded. "I will, and the week after that. Every week you'll have me." She stood, her eyes scanning his face. "Don't make promises you're not willing to bleed for." "I'm not afraid of blood," he said. "I'm afraid of what happens if I don't try." Mara didn't kiss him that night. But she left the venue with a folded napkin in her pocket, a few lines scrawled in her own handwriting, a poem she hadn't meant to write, but did anyway. She didn't know what would come next. But for the first time in years, the idea of next didn't feel impossible. Tristan stood inside the empty loft as the city lights blinked through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. The furniture hadn't arrived yet, just a mattress on the floor, a coffee maker he didn't know how to use, and a single chair by the window where he'd been sitting for almost an hour, watching the river flicker in the dark. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was taut, unfamiliar. He'd built empires from glass towers and boardroom strategies. Now he was building something that required no spreadsheets, something with a pulse, something human. His phone rang once, then again. He didn't answer. He was waiting for her. When she knocked, he opened the door instantly. Mara stood in the hallway, cheeks flushed from the wind, her canvas jacket spotted with faint rain. "I didn't think you'd actually be here," she said, glancing past him into the mostly empty space. "You told me to show up," Tristan said. "I don't take that lightly. You have zero furniture. I have a kettle and an unreasonable amount of ambition." She gave a short breath of amusement, then quieter. "This doesn't feel like your world." He stepped aside. "It isn't." "Not yet." She walked in slowly, her boots leaving faint prints on the hardwood. Her eyes scanned the bare walls, the untouched kitchen, the mattress without a frame. "You really did this," she said. "I didn't want to just say the words, I wanted to prove them." Mara didn't sit. She moved to the window and leaned her shoulder against the glass. "I almost didn't come. I would have waited anyway," he said, "for as long as it took. I don't need you to wait for me, Tristan. I need you to move with me." He crossed the room, his voice steady. "Then tell me where to go." She turned to face him, the city lights painting a soft glow across her skin. "I found a poem I wrote when I was 16. It was in the back of an old sketchbook I hadn't opened in years." "What did it say?" She hesitated. Then, "I don't remember the exact words. But it was about wanting to be seen, not just noticed, really seen." Tristan's voice dropped. "I see you." Mara looked down at her hands. "You said I was the story, but I don't want to be a story you tell after you go back to your world." I'm not going back, he said. I'm building a new one, she stepped closer. Then show me. He took her hand and led her toward the wall opposite the windows. A piece of paper was taped there, a sketch of a layout, lines drawn in pencil, rough and unfinished. This is what I'm turning it into, he said. Not a billionaire's penthouse, a home, something that doesn't need a valet or a wine cellar. She studied the paper. Is that a studio space for you, he said, if you ever want to paint again or write? Or just throw things at the wall until it makes sense? She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, you really bought a place and designed a room for someone you've only known a few weeks. I've known a lot of people for years who have never made me feel the way you do. She looked over at the mattress. That's still tragic. I thought we could fix that together. He opened the closet and pulled out a folded blanket and 2 pillows. This is all I've got until the moving truck gets here tomorrow. Mara laughed under her breath. You're going to ruin your entire back sleeping on that floor. I've survived worse. She walked over and sat down on the mattress. You're being ridiculous. Desperate times, he said, lowering beside her. Rain tapped the windows with a steady rhythm as they lay on their backs, staring at the ceiling. Do you ever get scared? She asked suddenly. Every day, he said without hesitation. But not of this. What are you scared of then? That I'll miss something important because I was too busy chasing things that didn't matter. She turned her head toward him. And what matters to you now, he said, and not in some poetic billionaire way. I mean the version of you that laughs when she drops her keys, who argues with air traffic controllers, who eats chocolate out of her jacket pocket. She laughed, startled. How do you didn't think I noticed? Her voice softened. No one ever notices. I do, he said. Then he sat up and reached into his coat pocket. I was going to wait, but I'm not good at waiting. He pulled out a small blue box. Mara's breath caught. I know what this looks like, he said. But it's not about the ring. You don't even have to wear it. It's just a symbol of what I'm offering. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a diamond, it was a thin silver band, simple, elegant, shaped like a folded paper plane. I didn't want something traditional, Tristan said. I wanted something that reminded me of how we met. Something that isn't flashy but still means everything. Mara stared at it. I'm not asking for a yes right now, he added quickly. I'm just asking you to believe that I mean it. She took the box gently from his hand. Her fingers brushed the edge of the band. Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? She asked. Probably that I was lost. I thought you were going to be another problem to solve. Another mess made by someone who didn't care. And now I think you might be the only thing in my life that doesn't feel temporary. She closed the box and pressed it to her chest. You'll have to come with me to my sister's barbecue next week, she said. Done. She'll ask invasive questions. I'll answer them. She once asked my last boyfriend how much he made in a year. I'll bring pie, and you can't wear anything expensive. I'll find something with holes in it. She looked at him, eyes glassy. You're serious about this? Every part of me. She leaned forward and kissed him, no rush, no hesitation, just certainty. When she pulled back, her voice was quiet. I want you to stay. I already have. Later, as the rain faded into quiet, they lay side by side under the blanket, her head on his shoulder, the future opening up like a runway ahead of them. No more departures, no more waiting, just them together. Mara adjusted the strap of her sundress and stared at the house across the yard. Strings of paper lanterns swayed in the warm breeze, and the scent of grilled corn and charcoal drifted through the air. Children shrieked in delight near a sprinkler. Her sister's annual summer barbecue was in full swing, and Mara wasn't sure if she was more nervous about the crowd or the man beside her holding the pie tin like it was a peace offering. You brought lemon meringue, she said, trying to sound casual. Your sister's favorite, Tristan replied, glancing toward the back porch. I did my homework, thoroughly. She's still going to interrogate you. I expect nothing less. I've faced shareholders in hostile takeovers with less tension than this. Mara glanced at him. His sleeves were rolled up and he wore a faded navy button-down that didn't look like it had ever seen a tailor. He looked reachable, like someone who belonged in this world. "You're sure you want to do this?" "I'm not here to impress anyone," he said. "I'm here because you said yes." She let out a breath, then reached for his hand and led him across the yard. Introductions were a blur of names and laughter, and it wasn't long before her younger cousins dragged Tristan into a fiercely competitive game of cornhole. He didn't fake his throws or pretend to lose. He played to win, but he laughed when he missed and clapped when the kids landed a shot. Mara watched from the porch, sipping iced tea and trying not to grin. Her sister approached, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "So that's the guy," Mara nodded. "He's different than I expected. Less Wall Street, more neighbor you'd trust with your dog." "He's trying," Mara said softly. "He doesn't have to try," her sister replied. "He's already here." Later, when the sky turned dusky violet and fireflies began to blink in the tall grass, Tristan found Mara near the garden fence. She was barefoot now, her heels discarded somewhere under a lawn chair. "I survived," he said, brushing a leaf from his shoulder. "Your cousin tried to sell me a comic book for $20. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. But I bought it anyway." She laughed and he leaned closer. "This," he said, motioning to the yard, the laughter, the sticky fingers and spilled lemonade, "feels more like home than any penthouse I've ever stood in." Mara reached up and tucked her fingers into the collar of his shirt. "You're not just saying that because your tie-free neck is finally breathing. I'm saying it because I've never felt more certain about anything." He slid a hand into his pocket and pulled out the paper plane band again. It wasn't in a box this time, just resting in his palm. "I still don't need a ceremony or a guest list, I just need you." Mara stared at the ring, then at him. "My life won't stop being messy," she said. "There'll be late shifts, holidays on standby, and probably a lot of nights where I fall asleep in my uniform." "I'll be there," he said. "Every night, whether you come home cursing the weather or humming some song from the radio," she swallowed. "I don't want to lose myself." "Then don't," he said. "I'm not here to change you, I'm here to grow with you." She took the ring and slipped it on her finger without ceremony. It fit like it was always meant to be there. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this." Tristan lowered his forehead to hers, eyes closed. "I'll never stop choosing you," he whispered. "You better not," she murmured. "I already gave you my last lemonade popsicle." The next few months unfolded in layers. Tristan scaled back his travel. He declined events that once defined his schedule and spent more mornings learning how to make coffee without breaking the machine. Mara got back into painting, setting up a small corner of the loft with canvases and mismatched brushes. She didn't ask for opinions. He never gave them unless she did. They argued occasionally about groceries, about how many throw pillows counted as excessive, about whether streaming a movie counted as a date. But every spat ended with a deeper understanding, a firmer root. Tristan didn't announce their engagement to the media. He didn't need to. The ring stayed on her finger and their life unfolded quietly, privately, beautifully. One afternoon, Mara came home to find the studio filled with the smell of linseed oil and jazz music drifting from the speakers. Tristan was on the floor, trying to assemble a bookshelf, an instruction manual open beside him. She stepped over a rogue screw and kissed the top of his head. "Need help? I'm deeply qualified to run multinational companies but apparently incapable of vertical shelving." She laughed and sat beside him. "We'll figure it out." They always did. That winter they got married in the loft, barefoot and surrounded by plants and paint-splattered drop cloths. Her sister officiated. Her co-workers came straight from the airport in their uniforms. Tristan wore a navy suit with no tie. She wore a soft, ivory dress she found in a vintage shop. There were no fireworks, no magazine covers, no choreographed dances. Just vows whispered in a room they built together. "I promise to never let the sky feel too far from our reach," he said, slipping the paper plane band back onto her finger. "I promise to keep my feet on the ground," she replied, "but only if I can fly with you." When they kissed, someone knocked over a potted plant. They laughed and no one cared. They spent their honeymoon in a cabin by the lake, far from airports and boardrooms. Tristan learned to cook eggs without setting off the smoke alarm. Mara painted every sunrise, and when spring returned, they opened the windows and let the world in. He still flew sometimes, but only when it made sense. She still worked the ramp, but now she didn't dread the long shifts. Every night they came home to the same place, to each other. One evening, Mara stood in the studio holding a finished canvas. It was the first piece she'd signed with her full name in years. Tristan walked in, drying his hands on a towel. "You're going to show it," she hesitated. "I think I'm ready," he kissed her temple. "You've always been ready," she turned, smiling. "Do you think we'll ever go back to being anonymous?" "I hope not," he said. "Then I wouldn't get to say the words I never get tired of." She raised an eyebrow. "Which ones?" "I love you." She wrapped her arms around his waist. "Good, because I plan on hearing them every day." They stood there, surrounded by half-finished canvases and the scent of turpentine and coffee, and outside, beyond the windows, the city breathed quietly steady, real, and theirs.